A new security pact between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and Turkey is reshaping the Middle East's strategic map, bringing together three of the Muslim world's most influential powers under a collective defence framework. Named after the holy city where it was signed on Friday, the Mecca Joint Defence Agreement stipulates that an attack against one member is an attack against all three. Echoing NATO's Article 5, the clause gives the pact immediate geopolitical significance, even as it leaves specific military commitments vague. The three governments insist it is a purely defensive pact aimed at no specific country and is open to new members. But it lands in the middle of the US-Israeli war on Iran and renewed Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia. We'll be joined shortly by Trita Parsi to unpack the implications here. But first, to walk through the mechanics of the deal, I'm joined by MEE's Turkey Bureau Chief, Ragip Soylu. Ragip, welcome back to the show. These are three heavyweight Muslim-majority states. You've got Turkey, NATO's second largest military, Saudi Arabia, the financial muscle, Pakistan, the only nuclear-armed Muslim state. How will this defense agreement shift the gravity of power in the Middle East?
Well, thanks for having me. We should all begin to think that this is an unprecedented alliance, and the fact that it's having a NATO fifth article similar to that clause, which has been really central in the existence of NATO since the Cold War, meaning that an attack on one means an attack on all, is a really significant leap of faith by these three countries, because in the sense that Turkey and Saudi Arabia, if you look at the close history, has really had differences. A lot of embargoes, trade embargoes, shouting matches, etc. Now you see that Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia coming together and establishing this alliance already cemented a division within the region, because we know that UAE and Israel are basically drawing a line to this alliance, and there's a talk that India and Greece can also eventually join. And this trilateral mechanism is signaling that from this point forward, Turkey and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are going to basically establish a collective deterrence mechanism. I think there are a lot of talk about how this mechanism would work, but I think the key word here is the deterrence, because the Saudis have a good army. Maybe there are some operational problems. The Pakistanis have also a good army that you could see during the India-Pakistan skirmishes last year. And Turkey is a proven military force. But when you put all this together, it basically complements each other. The Pakistan having the nuclear, warheads, Turkey having a reviving and a bourgeoising defense industry. And then the Saudi Arabia also as a young infrastructure, and also got the funds to basically support further investments on the defense industry and defense in general in coming years.
Now, this collective deterrence that you describe, critics are arguing that favours Saudi Arabia at the current time when the kingdom is under attack from multiple directions. You have Iran, the Houthis, you have Iraqi militias, but you say that Ankara is the one who's been pushing for this provision for years. So who is the driving force behind this agreement, and what is the game plan?
I think when Saudi Arabia and Pakistan had signed the deal, Turks were also wanted to be part of it, because Ankara has been pushing for this agenda that the Middle East needs a security mechanism that is independent from the Western powers and basically owned by the local actors. And that security alliance between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia actually signaling another thing. That means that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are not going to wage war against each other. So by including Turkey in the trilateral mechanism, you also declare that Turkey and Saudi Arabia, they're not going to be enemies anymore. So that is very significant for Turkey. But in the same time, the missing parts that I mentioned to you just before, the further vision in the region in the future about how these three powers can work together is very important for Turkey. And secondly, as you know, Turkey is a NATO country, and there has been really complaints by Ankara since 2023 about Israel's expansionist and also really scary tactics in the region. and Turkey is trying to basically stabilize the area surrounding itself by, establishing and expanding this security partnership. They also want to include Egypt as well, and they want to also include other countries as well. To say that, the further attacks on these countries, it will mean that all the other countries are also going to have to be involved in the future. So it's not just going to be a bilateral fight anymore between Israel and Lebanon, or Israel and Syria, or Israel and someone else, or Iran attacking one country or ignoring others. That means in the future, whenever a conflict erupts in the region, all the countries have to be involved and they have to stop it. And that's the real meaning of deterrence. I mean, of course, Houthis can still attack Saudi Arabia, or India can attack Pakistan. But in the same time, all these countries from now on will have to think what kind of a help Pakistan and Turkey would provide to Saudi Arabia, or Saudi Arabia and Turkey would provide to Pakistan. And it is important for Turkey to maintain that perception of deterrence. And as you will see, it will get more institutional in coming months, and we will have more, cues on how this alliance will progress. But Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister, made it very clear that it will be mimicking NATO. And NATO, as you know, have different and specific defense plans in every different aspect of the security.
Yeah. Now, one country's absence from the deal has raised eyebrows, and that is Egypt's, because over the last few months, the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan, and Egypt have been meeting repeatedly to shape a diplomatic exit from the war. Now, together they make up the R4 group. Yet, when the deal was announced, Egypt was left out. You report, Ragip, that Egypt wasn't excluded from the deal, it declined to join the deal. How do you know this, and why did Egypt decline?
Turkish and regional sources say that Egypt declined the offer. And I think there also has been a really good report by Madam Mas, the Egyptian news site, also confirming from the Egyptian sources that the Egypt avoided for now. And I think there are like multitudes reasons, but for Egypt, they have to pick a side. As I said at the top, that there's a UAE-Israel axis, and Egypt has really all sorts of different defense and financial partnerships and deals with UAE. There are Egyptian aircraft in UAE, as you know, and they don't want to pick a side in this division. And the Saudis actually, by signing this trilateral deal, also made very clear that their alliance with the UAE is basically now ended. I mean, we all know that there's been a problem, but this, I think, signaling that this is the end. And I think Egyptians are not ready to make that choice. And secondly, we know that Egypt has a really complicated relationship with Israel. I mean, of course, they have been really angry at Israel's actions in Gaza, on the border as well. But in the same time, there is a deep energy connection. The Egyptians are really big on the gas with Israel. And secondly, both are the American allies, and Egypt basically believes that it has to maintain this interesting relationship with Israel, and they don't want to be appearing that they're prepping to create this front against Israel.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Israel would, for obvious reasons, be threatened by this deal, and they have expressed that. And I've contextualized it within the Iran war, but the Iran war is not the only possible trigger or accelerator for this deal. The pact builds directly on the Saudi-Pakistan pact, which was signed just days after Israel's strike on Doha in September 2025. How relevant is Israel's regional militancy and aggression in triggering this defense pact?
For Turkey, it's very central. I mean, of course, you can also talk about the Iranian angle, but you are very right that for Turkey, but as well as the Saudis, the Gaza war and the genocide that happened there, but also the Israeli actions in Syria, the airstrikes in Doha, this aggression and the expansionist policies that Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan says really spooked a lot of countries. And I think the Saudis also should be included that, as you know, we have been talking about Abraham Accords between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and now it's very clear that the Saudis are not in the same path, and they changed their minds on this, and the main reason is the Israeli actions. And for the Turks, of course, they're not looking to confront the Israelis militarily, and they made it very clear there already has been several confliction channels over Syria between Turkey and Israel. But in the same time, they want to create this multi-layered, deterrence approach with NATO, with this trilateral mechanism, with every possible venue to basically make sure that Israelis are kept in check and they're not being able to follow this policy. And I think Gaza peace deal, Turkish, Qatari, and Pakistani efforts to broker an Iran deal. All these efforts basically are Ankara's, partially or sometimes solely Turkish efforts to maintain that stability in the region for the coming years.
And it's worth noting that former Pakistani ambassador Asif Durrani said about this deal, it could open the door to addressing decades-old conflicts, including the enduring Palestinian issue, through a more regionally driven approach. So apparently the alliance has its eyes on Palestine. How has this deal been received inside Israel? Out of curiosity, have you documented any of the responses?
I mean, there has been a flurry of media reportings citing the Israeli officials. There are many people who already perceived this alliance against Israel. I think Turks and the Saudis and the Pakistanis made very clear that they don't have a targeted enemy or a country that they established this alliance against. But it's very clear that how Israel has been behaving in the region, how the Saudis and Turks have been changing their tune and attitude towards Israel. So I think the Israelis may be right to think that this alliance might be eventually a counterbalancing act against this country. But at the same time, as Fidan said a few months ago, that this regional four, where Egypt also part of this security mechanism or regular consultations, if you may say, that Israel could also join one day to that mechanism if they recognize a state of the Palestine on the 1967 borders. So I think Turks are going to have this open approach, at least verbally, to diffuse tensions and to say to the Israelis that Turkey has no military aims and plans against Israel.
Ragip, Soylu, thank you so much for joining us once again here on MEE Live.